Rose and Ruby are twin sisters who turned out to be worst enemies. They were not identical. Right from when they were kids they fought over everything that they ever came across. Their toys, clothes, shoes, and even the attention of their parents. Rose at the point broke a glass cup on her twin sister's head when she realized that Ruby had used her special cup to drink some tea. Ruby in turn switched her twin sister's shampoo with hair removal cream a day before her school dance performance. By the time they turned 16 the entire house had become a battlefield. Rose once locked Ruby outside in the rain for 3 hours. Ruby decided to pay back by pouring paint into Rose's school bag the night before her exams. Their parents Mr. and Mrs. Harrison were exhausted from everyday chaos between their daughters, and nothing they did to make their daughters love one another worked. One day the girls got into a brutal fight in their living room. It started with a slap and ended with broken plates, blood on the wall, and a near-fire incident from a candle that they knocked over whilst fighting. So Mr. Harrison decided that it was high time to separate the twins. He sent Rose to live with his brother in another city, leaving Ruby alone in their home. The twins were so excited to finally be apart they lived their separate lives happy and made new friends who did not constantly remind them of their twin. For the first time in their lives they lived in peace. Rose thrived in Lagos. Her uncle was so strict but kind. Under his mentorship she became disciplined, focused and ambitious. She joined her school science club and won a statewide robotics competition, whilst her twin sister Ruby, who was back in Delta, found peace in her own way. She took up painting and dance, hobbies that she had never been able to enjoy in the chaos of competing with her sister Rose. Her calm, confident spirit began to shine and her grades improved gradually, but everything changed when the twins turned 25. Ruby got married in Delta to a young man who she dated during her time at the university. Her sister Rose did not attend the wedding as Ruby never wanted her around. She moved into her husband's house and soon fell pregnant with child. Her husband John was a successful architect who worked with a prestigious firm that handled high-end projects across Nigeria. He was kind, patient and deeply in love with Ruby. However, his work took him around the country, and Ruby, now 6 months pregnant, often found herself alone in their home. She kept herself busy with baby preparations, arranging the nursery and buying clothes for the baby who was due to be born in 3 months. One Thursday afternoon her husband John returned from a trip with an announcement. "Babe," he said, rubbing her belly gently. "The company is sending me to Abuja for a month. It's a last-minute project for one of our top clients who requested for my services in particular." Ruby's face dropped as she looked right at him. "So you're leaving me alone again?" she asked her husband, who smiled and revealed to her that she was coming with him. "I've already booked our apartment by the sea," he said to Ruby, who could not hide her excitement. All her life she had never been to Abuja. The thought of finally going filled her with so much excitement as she packed up her bags ready to travel. 3 days later they arrived at the luxurious Landmont View apartment in Abuja. It was everything John had promised: sleek, modern and peaceful, with glass walls that opened to the ocean. For the first time in weeks Ruby felt alive again. Each morning she stood on the balcony in her flowing maternity gown, watching the waves, sipping a mocktail as she hummed some lullaby to the baby growing inside of her. Abuja was so magical and Ruby was having the time of her life. She took a stroll around the estate and came across a salon in the corner. Ruby walked into the salon to wash her hair. She sat on the chair waiting to get her hair washed when suddenly her husband walked into the same salon with another woman. Ruby could not believe her eyes. She stood up and decided to approach them when she suddenly saw something that made her freeze on her feet. The strange woman standing with her husband was her twin sister Rose, the same sister who she had not seen in almost 9 years. Rose now owned a company that was into smart houses. She was now based in Abuja and had to work with John on the job that brought him to Abuja. Ruby stood there stoned, her swollen belly rising and falling with each shaky breath. Of all the women in Abuja, it had to be her twin sister Rose. Her eyes moved between her husband and her twin sister, and Ruby did not know how to feel. 9 years didn't change anything, she thought to herself as she looked at her sister, who stood there shocked as well to see. John had always heard about her twin sister Ruby but never got the chance to meet her. John looked like a deer caught between 2 dangerous tigers. They didn't say a word, but their silence in that moment spoke louder than words. Rose smiled at her sister and reached out for a hug, but Ruby was too weary to fall for her tricks. She pulled her husband's hands and dragged him back to the apartment. When they got to the apartment, Ruby urged him to stop working with Rose and choose someone else. "You can't possibly work with my twin sister," she said to John, who told her that his client chose Rose specifically to work on the project. "We were both handpicked by the client," "There's no way we can change that now," John said carefully. "It's not personal, Ruby, it's just work," but deep down Ruby felt the old warning signs, the same feeling she used to have whenever Rose set her eyes on something that she wanted. She remembered how Rose once snatched her childhood best friend just because she called Ruby her favorite twin, or how Rose flirted with her secondary school crush just to spite her. History she feared was about to repeat itself, and Ruby was not willing to let that happen. She pleaded with her husband to abandon the project, but John saw no reason to do so. He reassured her that she had nothing to worry about, and Ruby decided to trust her husband, knowing how much he loved her. Rose, on the other hand, couldn't understand what was happening. She had never met John before in her life, but found herself connected to him. It was so strange to realize that he was her twin sister's husband. Rose tried to shake it off, but the feeling only grew stronger each time that she saw him at late-night design reviews. The casual laughter over building sketches, the way he said her name, everything builds a storm inside of her that she could not control. At first she kept her distance, doing everything within her power not to stir up her emotions, but the more that she was around him, the more her emotions grew. Soon it became unbearable, so one Monday they worked late at the project site. The lights were dim, the rain outside tapping gently against the glass windows. John stood beside her explaining a new structure in his design. Rose wasn't listening. She was watching the way his lips move, how his eyes lit up with passion. She didn't know when she reached out and touched his arm. He looked at her, and in that look something snapped. They kissed just once, but that kiss became the crack in the dam. From then on they could not stop. They began to meet in secret at the project office, in hotel lounges, even inside Rose's car parked in a quiet corner of the estate. It was wild, intense, and riddled with guilt, but neither of them stopped. Rose tried to make an excuse for what she was doing. She started believing that maybe, just maybe, fate had made a mistake, that she was the one meant to be with John. As for John, he had never felt anything like it. Rose was bold, fiery, confident, everything that used to draw him to her sister Ruby, but now Ruby was quiet, emotional, and exhausted. He convinced himself that he still loved her, but Rose made him feel alive, and so their relationship continued. Months later, Ruby went into labor alone in a hospital room in Lagos, screaming in pain and betrayal, and her husband John was in Abuja, tangled in the sheets with her twin sister Rose. When the hospital tried to reach him on his phone, it was switched off. Ruby gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, tears running down her cheek, not from the pain of childbirth but from the piercing pain of abandonment. 1 week later, John returned back to Lagos to find his wife rocking their baby to sleep. He felt so ashamed of himself, knowing that he wasn't there for her birth, knowing that he was in the hands of her twin sister while his wife bore the pain of labor alone. The thoughts haunted him, but it was not enough to stop him. When Ruby looked up at him, her eyes were blank. "I named her Amelia," she whispered, rocking her baby slowly. John stood there frozen as guilt washed over him like a tidal wave. He stepped forward trying to speak, but she raised a hand. "Don't," she said calmly. As John began to beg, he made excuses as to why he wasn't around, but Ruby knew better than to believe him. She sat there perceiving the perfume of another woman on her husband while his lips lied at every word that fell from them. Ruby did not scream, she didn't accuse, she simply stood up, placed baby Amelia gently in the crib, and walked into the bathroom, leaving her husband to marinate in his guilt. She locked the door behind her and leaned against it, finally letting the tears to fall, not because she was weak but because she was finally done pretending that she wasn't broken. Inside the bedroom, John sat on the edge of the bed staring at the crib. The baby's small breath filled the room with a softness that he didn't deserve. His hands trembled as he reached for his child, who he had never held. He held her for the first time and wondered what the hell he was doing, sleeping with his wife's twin sister. He picked up his phone, determined to end things with Rose, when he heard a faint cry on the other end of the phone. What happened? He asked Rose, who informed him that she was in Lagos and had to meet him immediately. John's heart pounded in his chest as he put the baby back into her crib and tapped lightly on the bathroom door, informing his wife that he'll be back soon. But Ruby did not respond. She simply turned on the tap, letting it run like a wall between them as John grabbed the car keys and rushed out of the house. He met Rose a few minutes later at a quiet restaurant far from their home. She sat in a corner waiting as John approached her, looking so worried. "What's going on?" he asked as Rose began to cry all over again, informing him that she lost their pregnancy. John opened his eyes in shock, as he never knew that she was ever pregnant. The words slammed into him like a punch as John sank into the chair in disbelief. "But you never told me," he said to Rose, who informed him that she was going to tell him before she finally lost it. John buried his face in his hand. The weight of his betrayer was now too heavy to carry. He had to do something about the mess and decided to break it off with Rose before things got out of hand. He informed her that they had to end things, but Rose flared up in anger on hearing it. "How dare you leave me at a time like this, at a time when I need you the most?" She asked John, who explained to her that whatever they had was a mistake. "I'm married to your twin sister, for crying out loud," he said to Rose. She was boiling with anger at the mention of her twin sister name. "So you're now choosing her over me?" she asked John, who told her that there was no need to choose because Ruby was already his wife. "Even before I met you I had chosen her. That's why she's my wife. Please stay away from us and never call my number again," he said to Rose as he walked out of the restaurant, leaving her alone in her tears. Rose returned to her hotel room in disbelief. She could not imagine that John would do this to her after all the times that they shared. She could not bear to see her twin sister with the man that she loved, so she picked up her suitcase and drove to their house. Rose arrived at the house in the dead of the night, banging on their front door like a woman who was possessed. Ruby opened the door slowly, holding her newborn baby in one hand. She froze at the sight of her twin sister with a suitcase in hand. A cold chill ran down her spine as she asked her what she was doing in her house. Rose stepped inside without invitation. "I'm not leaving," she said. "He chose you, fine, but I won't be pushed aside like I'm nothing." Ruby laughed bitterly and began to speak. "So this is your plan? You betray me, then move into my home like a stray dog?" Rose snapped on hearing this. "I have the same right as you over your so-called husband. I'm pregnant for him, so his blood runs inside of me as it does in you." Rose in that moment lied to her sister that she was pregnant for John. She knew that this was the only way to break her sister and her so-called marriage. Rose was ready to do everything within her power to have John, even if it meant lying. John, who was in the bathroom when everything occurred, emerged from the hallway and met Rose in his home. His eyes widened in disbelief as he asked her what she was doing in his house. "I told you," Rose said, staring back at him as he watched her speak. "If you won't choose me, then I'll stay right here. Let's see how long you can pretend to be a faithful man with two women under your roof." John did everything to send her away, but Rose remained adamant. She picked her suitcase and moved into the master's bedroom, the same room where her twin sister slept with her husband. John couldn't understand how he got himself in this kind of mess. He pleaded with his wife to give him some time to move her twin sister out of their home, and Ruby did not say a word to him. She just stood there boiling as she watched her sister. Rose threw her things out of her own bedroom. Ruby quietly packed her things and moved into the empty room down the hall. Her husband, after much pleading, moved in with her as they left Rose to sleep in the master's bedroom alone. Rose could not stand the thought of John sleeping on the same bed with her sister. A wave of rage and jealousy coursed through her body as she tossed and turned on the bed, plotting on how to break their marriage apart. The next morning, while Ruby went to buy some diapers in the supermarket, Rose quickly prepared breakfast for John, who was still asleep in his room. She left a note on the table to make it seem like it was his wife Ruby who prepared the breakfast. Rose knew that John would never eat a food that she prepared, so she left the note and walked away, gently waiting patiently for him to eat the food. A few minutes later, John walked out of the room and met breakfast. He read the note on the table and smiled as he sat to eat. Immediately he gobbled down the tea. John became dizzy and disoriented, soon seeing that her plan had worked. Walked out of her room wearing her sister's robe and perfume. She escorted him back to the master's bedroom, pretending to be her sister as he made his way with her. A few hours later, Ruby returned from the shops to find her husband asleep with her sister in the same bed. Filled with rage, she took photographs of them and posted it online for the whole world to see. "Twin steals her sister's husband," the caption read. As the internet went crazy over the news, Rose was awoken by calls informing her that her investors were pulling out their support from her company. Even her husband John lost his job at the firm after the scandal exploded. The company could not afford the public shame, especially on their project, which was meant to represent integrity and innovation. John was asked to resign quietly, and all endorsements connected to Rose's smart home brand were immediately withdrawn. The news spread like wildfire. Bloggers, influencers, and gossip sites devoured the story, especially as they found out that his wife Ruby just had a child a few weeks ago. Public sympathy began to pour in as so many groups contributed money for her to care for her baby. Rose could not contain her rage. She had lost everything and had to make Ruby pay for what she did, so she approached a herbalist man hoping to kill her twin sister Ruby. But what he told her shocked her to the bones. "A death to Ruby is a death to you," he said to Rose, who sat there confused at what he was talking about. The juju man then explained to her that if she ever kills her twin sister Ruby she would die. A few days later Rose could not believe her ears. She pressed to know why, and the herbalist man revealed to her that her twin sister and herself were a reincarnation of two sworn enemies who killed themselves in their previous lives. They returned again, but this time as twins. The herbalist revealed that their destinies were intertwined and that if Ruby did anything to kill her sister she too will die. He also went further to reveal that the longer they hold bitterness in their heart for each other, the longer they live in absolute misery that will eventually lead to their death. Make peace with your sister to break the cycle or risk the cycle repeating itself again, he said to Rose, who stood up terrified. She now understood why she hated her twin sister so much and didn't mind hurting her. She staggered out of the herbalist's shrine, his words pounding in her ears as she made her way back to her car. Rose drove back to her sister's house in silence. The road ahead was blurry with tears. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel, but her mind was in complete chaos. Everything finally made sense. The endless fight, the unprovoked hatred, the constant urge to destroy Ruby even when she had done nothing. It was never about jealousy, it was a curse that they had been dragged into long before they were born, and unless she ended it now it would drag them both to their early grave. She arrived Ruby's house a few minutes later and stood by the door, unable to knock, the guilt of what she had done weighing down on her. As she finally summoned the courage and knocked, Ruby had just put her baby down to sleep when she heard the knock on the door. She rushed to check who it was and saw her sister Rose, who looked remorseful and sad. "Why are you here?" Ruby asked her sister Rose, who got down on her knees and began to plead for her forgiveness. "Ruby," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I'm so sorry," she said to Ruby, whose lips trembled as she asked her what she was doing at her door. "I went to kill you," Rose replied honestly. "I thought if you disappeared that I'd finally be happy and free from the hatred that had welled up in my heart, but instead I found the truth." Ruby's body went cold as she asked her what she was talking about. Rose then told her all that the herbalist had said to her, that if she kill her that she too will die. "We are not just sister Ruby, we are reincarnated enemies who killed each other in our previous life. We returned as twins and bitterness followed us into this life. Now that we know the truth, it's better that we heal or repeat the cycle of hatred that will eventually lead to our death." Ruby stood there frozen, unsure of if to believe her sister or not, but something within her believed every word that her sister had said. She stood there shocked as her sister confessed that she drugged John on that fateful day to make him sleep with her in the master's bedroom. "I had to spray your perfume and wear your robe to trick him into sleeping with me, as John never wanted to have anything to do with me again. I'd also lied to you that I was pregnant, hoping that you would leave your husband for me," she said to Ruby, who stood there frozen as she watched her sister plead for her forgiveness. Ruby stood at the doorway, her breath caught in her chest. The woman kneeling before her, her twin sister, her enemy, her blood, had betrayed her in the deepest way possible, and yet here she was stripped of all pride, confessing every sin and every lie. Rose's voice shook as she began to speak. "Please, I'm not here to deceive you. I want us to break the curse and live in peace. I have told you the absolute truth, Ruby, and I'm sorry for ever doing them. If you can't forgive me, I understand, but please don't carry this hatred in your heart for me forever." For a long moment Ruby said nothing. She just stared at her sister, unsure of what to say. Then slowly her gaze dropped to Rose, and in that moment, in the brokenness, in the honesty, in the surrender, she no longer saw a rival. All she saw was a reflection of her own pain, and just like that, something inside her softened. Ruby forgave her sister, not because she deserved it, but because she deserved peace, and Rose was so grateful to her for her forgiveness. She also apologized to her sister for ruining her business, but Rose smiled and informed her that she deserved it. She returned back to Abuja and began to rebuild her business again from the scratch. Slowly, with the help of a few loyal friends, she began rebuilding her smart home consultancy. Not for fame, not to outshine Ruby, but simply to work and live with integrity. Meanwhile in Lagos, Ruby's life began to shift as well. John, deeply remorseful, spent every day trying to earn back her trust. He no longer worked with a big firm but took several jobs to support his family. He was home more present, attentive, not just with baby Amelia but with his wife Ruby, who decided to forgive him. It wasn't easy, but Ruby reminded herself that forgiving someone did not mean forgetting. It was choosing to move forward even when your heart still hurt from the blow. So she lived each day healing from the betrayal and reminding herself that the curse had finally been broken. The lesson to be learned from this story is that hurt can travel through generations, disguising itself as rivalry, jealousy, and pain until someone is brave enough to end the cycle. Sometimes those who hurt us the most are battling demons we cannot see or curses we do not understand. But true healing begins when we choose peace over pride, truth over secret, and forgiveness over revenge. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.